Okay, welcome to tonight's program, which is What the Internet Knows About You. I'm Kara, the Adult Services Librarian here at the Oregon Public Library. I am a librarian, not a internet security expert, but I've done some research on this topic and will provide citations throughout the presentation for the information that I found. And I will also share this slideshow to the participants who registered after the presentation. If you're watching the recording, you can reach out to the email address on the screen here, and I am happy to share this PowerPoint presentation.
Okay.
So, why are we here? We produce data when we're online, and that's like when we get those notifications that a website is using cookies, or we use social media to connect with our friends and family. We don't always know how that information is used or shared, and that's creepy. So everything keeps changing, and it is really hard to be safe online, but you can always be safer. So that's why we're here. So today, this is what we are going to talk about. If at any point you have questions, you can unmute yourself or use the chat to type in your question. So first, we're going to be talking about what is privacy, what is online tracking and why do we care, myths about hacking, building a threat model, easy things you can do, and then we're going to finish up with talking about passwords. So I am going to jump right into the content. What is privacy? So if you have an interest in history, you know that privacy is a fairly new concept. Going back to ancient Rome, they had communal baths. And even in more recent history, families slept all in one room. So the idea of having space to yourself wasn't really a thing. But privacy became a concern with the invention of the camera. People didn't want to have their photos taken and felt it was their right to be left alone. The idea of privacy is a subject that many academic papers have been written about. And another important note in privacy's history is the rise of the computers in the 60s. The meaning of privacy changed slightly, which is important to this presentation. So with computers, you were no longer able to opt out. The new idea of privacy then became more about control, to have the right to control information about yourself and the right to decide how information is communicated to others. You'll notice in these definitions about privacy, I'm not talking about secrecy. Privacy isn't about keeping secrets away from people. It's about autonomy, identity, and intimacy, deciding who, how, and what is shared about you. And in these discussions of privacy, often the rebuttal is, well, I have nothing to hide. And honestly, to be perfectly frank with you, I have said that in the past. I have nothing to hide, so what's the big deal? So I'm going to read this quote. Arguing that you don't care about privacy because you have nothing to hide is no different than saying you don't care about free speech because you have nothing to say. So this is a quote from Edward Snowden, and say what you want about him, but he makes a good point. It's great if you have nothing to hide, but other people feel differently for many different reasons, and they deserve to make decisions about privacy that make them feel good. So why does privacy matter? There are a lot of instances when a person might want privacy. They may have a health concern that may be discriminated against if it becomes known to others. Or maybe they're just not ready to share it with the world. People may be involved in social or political activities that, while are legal, might be persecuted for. We saw this recently when activists were doxxed after attending a protest. So doxing is DOXX, doxing is the act of publicly revealing private information about an individual or an organization. So folks attended a peaceful Black Lives Matter protest, and a photo was shared online, and now people are being harassed in person and online at their homes and jobs and such. So this is a real concern. Another reason is a person may be escaping an abusive relationship and not want to be found online. And then, other reasons on the screen, not having to explain yourself. Like I just don't want to be found online, and that's my right. I got, there are a lot of reasons why someone might not feel comfortable with information about them being shared, and they deserve their privacy. The bottom line is you shouldn't have to explain why you want privacy. It's just a thing we deserve. So I got these points from a great website called teachprivacy.com. So feel free to go there and check out more in-depth explanations. I didn't cover all of them on the screen. I just did some highlights, and feel free to go to that website for more information. So now we have established what privacy is. Let's talk about how it can be violated when we're online. And we will start talking about online tracking. So stores have almost always tracked our movements and then sent coupons or targeted ads, even when we weren't online. One example of this is loyalty cards. Companies can see what and how often and when you're buying things. They have found this to be profitable, knowing when or how you purchase something. But now online, companies have even more data available, which they can then put together profiles to make even more targeted ads. So what I just described is data mining. This is a practice of examining large sets of data to find patterns and generate new information about something. That idea of taking details that people relinquish freely and then finding patterns to make money off of is kind of scary, and it gets even scarier. Website tracking. So you may not even know you were being tracked. So here's an example. You're on a website and you agree to have a cookie downloaded to your browser. Sometimes there's not even that agreement. Sometimes it just happens. You don't always even agree to it. Sometimes it just happens without you knowing. So now when I say cookie, I don't mean the delightful treat. I mean a website cookie. And a cookie is something that's saved into your browser for the purpose of remembering information about you or your preferences. It can save a font size or another website preference. And it can also save recent searches and pages that you've gone to. So that's what a cookie is. And this can be used very benignly, very, just convenience. A tracking cookie, and I'm sure this has happened to you before, and it's happened to me. For instance, my husband used my computer to read about one of his hobbies, which is playing the guitar. Then when I log into Facebook, all of the ads are about guitars. And that's because of tracking cookies. They saw an interest and matched it to advertisements. And while it's pretty creepy, it's not the worst thing in the world. And it may help you find a new product or a guitar that you didn't know about. But ultimately, it's done to make a company money. In this case, Facebook makes money off of selling ads, and companies who advertise on Facebook make money when you purchase their products. Tracking cookies can also be exploited or misused to track other online behavior. So the tracking cookie would see that you went from this website to that website, you scrolled through certain things, stayed on that page for a certain amount of time, and then you moved on. While this is often done anonymously, meaning that they don't know it's you doing these things, they do have a profile of a person in your area doing these things. So the companies that gather this information don't always know it's Kara in Oregon, Wisconsin, but they know that someone in Oregon, Wisconsin is searching for guitars or whatever, and then they can take that data and make money. They can also sell your data to other companies that then use it to make money. So my one search can then be sold all around to multiple companies so that they can do data mining and find other behaviors. So information about things you do is making somebody else money. That's what data mining is. That's what a lot of this tracking cookie stuff is. That is what that's all about. So here is an example of how companies have been data mining for a while. Way on back in 2012, almost 10 years ago, Target used data mining to predict when customers were pregnant and then advertised baby products to these people. The parent of a 16-year-old complained when she got coupons for baby and pregnancy products. And it turns out that Target predicted that this 16-year-old was pregnant based on things she purchased. There was a massive outcry about privacy as a result of this incident. And for many people, this was the first time they'd heard about data mining or had any concerns about their privacy online. But in this case, the data mining was accurate enough to predict that this 16-year-old was pregnant. So cookies. You can clear your cookies off of your browser, and you should periodically. But that's really only a temporary fix, because as you do more things online, you will acquire more cookies and this sort of thing. So you can and should clear your cookies periodically, but it's not a cure-all fix. All right, so tracking online and online privacy becomes even more complicated when we consider that we carry around a computer in our pocket. And I am, of course, referring to cell phones. As you've probably seen on crime TV shows, mobile service providers can track your phone based on GPS and satellite signals. What you may not realize is that you can also be tracked based on what apps or Wi-Fi signals you're using. With Wi-Fi, if it is an unsecured network or a network available without a password, people can hack into the network and monitor people's activity on the network. And with apps, it's almost even built in what people can hack. Many apps use third-party code, which can be used for displaying a map or showing ads or something like that. So let's say that your app tracks your running route, and it uses your location to track the route, so then it can plot your path. Now it has your location at all times. It could get information on when you go to the grocery store, the doctor's office, a woman's shelter, or something else. And unless we read the agreement, and sometimes even after you read the agreement, you don't know how this information might be used. And sometimes you can give access to your location, your photos, your contacts, your browser, or something else. So that's pretty creepy. And that's why we should care. But I'm going to go on about some other unintended consequences of this. So I don't know who said this, but if you aren't paying for a product, you're the product. So if you don't pay for a service, then that company exists to make money off of you. And it's not inherently bad, but it's just something you should be aware of. One of the consequences of this is sometimes unwanted disclosure. Information is available that we don't want to be available. And so this is an example of that was in the news in 2018. A fitness app called Strava released popular running routes. The idea was you could meet up with other people who run similar routes or find new running routes. On the surface, this is a really cool idea. But US military personnel were using Strava to track their running routes on this secret military base in the middle of the desert. And when Strava released this update, the location of the military base was essentially released. So that was a big whoops. You looked at this map and you saw nothing and nobody because it was the middle of a desert. And then all of a sudden in this location, you can see all of this hot spot of running, which with military people being particularly healthy and avid runners, there was a hot spot here. And so the location of the secret base was revealed. So that's one possibility. Sometimes there are these oops that happen. Of course, one of our biggest concerns personally, at least for me, is identity theft. Depending on what information people get about you, your identity can be stolen. So in 2006, the head technologist of the Federal Trade Commission was hacked. Someone got her phone number and used an enrichment service to get more information about her. So an enrichment service is a company that you can pay to find more information about someone. Then with this information, someone bought 2 phones on her cell phone plan. So if the lead technologist of the FTC can get her identity stolen, I mean, it truly can happen to anybody. Another concern is discrimination. When ads are targeted to key demographics, it means that not everybody will see it. And it's one thing if you're targeting ads for hair care products or bicycles or something like that. But what if you're advertising a job or housing or credit card or something like that? Now you are purposefully excluded based on your data. So it's good to note that federal law prohibits all discrimination in ads on housing, jobs, and credit based on race, gender, and age. And in 2019, Facebook announced that it would stop allowing targeted ads for these categories, housing, jobs, and credit, based on race, age, and gender. And this was the result of a settlement with groups that sued Facebook over these practices. So your data can be discriminatory because it's revealing things about you, and then it's complicated. And yeah, so that is another unintended consequences, or maybe an intended consequence. So here we are. Lack of control. Another reason why we should care is that the public overwhelmingly feels like they don't have control over information collected about them, both by the government and by private companies. Privacy is all about control of information, and basically, according to this Pew study from 2019, the public does not feel like it has any control. So that is a look into why we should care. And now I want to talk a little bit about myths about being hacked. So we talked a lot about how there's a lot of data out there about our personal online habits, some unintended consequences of this, and then hacking is identity theft, and hacking is a big concern. So here are some myths about hacking. One is that only foolish people are hacked. I mean, sure, foolish people are hacked, but also cautious people who take precautions are hacked. It is not a matter of whether you'll get hacked, but when. And part of this is because we participate in a network, for example, the internet. We are dependent on others to protect us and our interests. So it's important to know that someone doesn't have to intend us harm to make us less safe online. Um, I think there's often a thought that there's these shadowy figures who hack online, and like, yeah, sure, there are those people, but also, someone left the door open, and it makes it easier for other people to get our information. So it's both. Another myth is that I'm not a target. Why would anybody want my information? And that's just untrue. And that's because we're all targets, because our usernames and passwords are valuable. Your financial and medical records, which we often access online, is valuable. Your behavior trail can be sold, traded, and shared, and it is valuable. And let's face it, your money is money, so it's valuable. Um, and even if it's not a lot of money, it's still money. So we are all potentially targets of hacking. I will share here that I was hacked. My work email, I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden I was locked out of my email, and lots of people were getting emails from me that I was not sending. Now, why did someone hack me? Not sure. Don't know why. I worked with our library's tech support, and they, shut it down and got me back in. And I sent emails to everybody saying that wasn't me. Don't click on that email and stuff. But I mean, it can happen to everybody. That was my work email account. I mean, what type of information would I have access to in my work email? I mean, I don't know, but something. So, think it's like I'm not a target? No, like you can be. Okay. Another myth is that I have antivirus software, so I'm safe. You might be safer because of antivirus software, but you're not safe. The threats we face online aren't necessarily to our devices, but to our data. You click a link, open an email, or let someone connect to your network, and you can be hacked even if you don't get a virus. So your the safety of your device is a little bit separate than the safety of your data. And antivirus software does not protect against being hacked. When I'm online, I'm anonymous, so I'm safe. Um, Maybe, but you're probably not as anonymous as you think. While your name and social security number may not be attached to your presence online, we give out more information than we think, sometimes willingly through social media. Also, your online activity often gives clues as to your identity, and your IP address is often linked to your general location. And your IP address is a number, is a thing, is an address that's assigned to you by your internet service provider. And every time you access online, you have an IP address. So the IP address is often linked to a specific location, a city, and sometimes you can get more specific than just the basic location. But in any case, you're probably not as anonymous as you think you are. So another myth is that email is safe. This one is just not true at all. Email can be hacked, as from my previous story, my work email was hacked. So just never send a social security number in an email, because Like you could send the email, then delete the email, and then delete your sent folder and all of that. But then you sent it to somebody else, and you don't know first if it's going to be intercepted or what they're going to do with the email on their end. So just don't do it. Just don't. Also avoid emailing like your driver's license number or any sort of identifiable information. It's just not secure. Okay, this is a huge one. This is a huge myth. Social media is safe. It's just no. It's not just about if your boss saw that picture of your vacation, but it's what the social media platform knows about you and who they are selling it to and what these folks are doing with it. Participating in social media can make you a target. So this brings us to our next topic, because with all of this information about what's happening with our data, it's pretty terrifying. What are you going to do? Delete all of your accounts and never see pictures of friends and family online? I mean, that's one response to the threat, but there are lots of ways to be safer. So we are going to be talking about how to manage your risk, and that is through a threat model. When you build a threat model, you are looking at what you do online and what is important to you to continue doing. You'll look at what devices you have, what worries you have, and what is likely. Yeah, I might be very worried about being attacked by birds because I saw the birds, but being attacked by birds is fairly rare. But I'm very worried. So I might change my behaviors, like reducing the amount of time I spend eating bread and birdseed outside. And as I research bird attacks, I may find that they are very rare, and that may change my behaviors as well. But I might still be very worried. So it's all about personal preference and research. Just like those bird attacks, they're pretty rare, so I'm going to boldly eat my sandwich outside, or I still may be very concerned about it. So it's all about how you feel about it. To help you research what is likely and know about potential threats, there are resources that you can use. So I'm going to talk about a handful of them. And the first one is called securityplanner.org. And it is a resource you can use to learn more about what's out there. It is a free resource, but sponsored by Consumer Reports. It provides personalized recommendations and expert advice. There are no third-party ads, but there are advertisements for Consumer Reports. And it takes you through important things to think about and provides recommendations. Some are free solutions, and then some are subscription solutions. So this is the Security Planner homepage. You answer a few questions, and then the website connects you with information. So here I'm selecting the devices that I use, a tablet, a computer, smart TV, smartwatch, and a gaming console. And then I can choose the things I'm most worried about, like phishing, protecting my financial information and so forth. And then I can share if I have any other concerns like identity theft. And finally, here are the resources that have been selected for me to go through to make the best decisions about what's out there and what I need to protect myself. So that is securityplanner.org. The next resource is SSD, the Surveillance Self-Defense. This is an online guide to help protect yourself from electronic surveillance. It was put together by the Electronic Frontier Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization that works to defend civil liberties in the digital world. So the reason why I have included all this information about the organization, because again, you should know where you're getting your advice from, especially if it's free, because again, if you're not paying for the product, you're the product. So how this information is funded is important. So this is a nonprofit organization that does fundraising and to provide this information. So as I was going through their website, it said, please use SD as a starting point for your own research and check for more recent facts, cases, and authorities. So aside from not using the Oxford comma there between cases and authorities, this is like the best thing you could see in a website, because it is encouraging you to be wary and critically analyze, critically think about the resources that they are presenting. I would be extremely wary of websites saying that they have all the answers and you should just do what they say. So this was a great example of encouraging you to read widely and make decisions for yourself. So this is the SSD homepage. They have links to further learning and security scenarios and other guides and basics. This page has a lot of information to read through, but it is really well done and written in really easy to understand language. This one doesn't have quite the graphics and clicking things as the first resource, so this is the only screenshot I have of it. The next resource is techsafety.org, and this is a project of SafetyNet, of the National Network to End Domestic Violence. They have a digital services toolkit that gives good advice for protecting yourself online. You might think that domestic violence and internet safety are unrelated, but people who experience domestic violence need to be able to privately share information, and also maybe seeking information that, if not kept private, may make them unsafe from their partner. So they really are connected, and this is a really great resource. So this is a good place to go when you're looking for reliable information about privacy. And this is a screenshot of their webpage, and they have a lot of really great links to articles with information. Okay, so next up in our agenda are some easy things you can do to be safer online. The first thing is to look at your devices. One easy way to reduce risk is to get rid of devices you don't use. It's like buying fewer lottery tickets. It reduces your chances. So if you don't use it, get rid of it. I think okay. And then, sorry, I missed the point here. If you do use a device, make sure that it is running the most recent update. So software companies will release updates when they are able to fix bugs or vulnerabilities. So always keep your computer running on the newest version of its operating system and also any other programs it uses. There are a handful of times when a program is discontinued or will not receive any other updates. If this is the case, try to replace those programs with different, newer programs that will be updated, or really think hard if you need to still use this software if it's no longer supported. And if that happens rarely, but something to think about. Next up is to manage device communications. This one's pretty easy, especially with a smartphone. Turn off or limit Bluetooth, location, Wi-Fi when you can. A quick way to do this is to turn the device on airplane mode, because it turns off all of these features. And then also limit mobile app and browsing permissions. Now, I notice this all the time. When I install an app on my phone, I notice it asks for permission to access my photos or my contacts or my location when it has no reason to. This now gives me pause. Do I want to finish installing this app? If I do, I usually don't give permission to these settings to see if it breaks the app. Sometimes the app really does need to access my location for it to work, but often it does not. If revoking access to this information breaks the app, you can always add the permissions back in. The reason for limiting this access is often because free apps make money by selling data they access. So limit access to these services from third-party apps. You don't know what's happening to that data. So this goes back to if you didn't pay for it, you're the product. So think about that. All right. This is where we start to get a little heavy. Avoid smart things. Smart things usually have security issues. So if you can, avoid them. And what I mean by this is Alexa or devices you speak to or have remote control over, your garage on your phone or something like that. Now, this isn't to say you can't use Alexa. And this goes back to your threat assessment. What are you comfortable with? If you do use Alexa or other smart tools, read the privacy information and explore all of those settings. So back in 2019, there was an article about how Amazon listens to what you tell Alexa. And this is in part true, and is still in part true. So I have a screenshot here from the Alexa device frequently asked questions. And this is a screenshot I took today. And I highlighted this portion. Supervised machine learning, an industry standard practice where humans review an extremely small sample of requests to help Alexa understand and correct interpretation of a request and provide the appropriate response in the future. So people listen to a small sample of what others say to Alexa to make Alexa's software response to voice commands better. But this might trigger a creepy response in you. So, and there are a lot of reasons why this may be like, oh, I don't like this. For one, like you don't know if or when your voice commands to Alexa would be monitored. Something that I personally find creepy is that this is FAQ number 10. So you have to read pretty far into the frequently asked questions before this comes up. And then the portion that I highlighted is halfway through that FAQ. You're probably going to skim it and be like, how do my voice recordings and text transcripts improve Alexa? Alexa is designed to get smarter every day. Cool, I'm done. But then it's hidden in the frequently asked questions that that a Amazon employee might be listening to portions of something you say. So it just, I don't know. What this says here is, yes, Amazon may be listening to what you say, and you don't really know if that's the case. But it only happens to a few people, so don't worry. But I'm kind of a worrier. Okay. So another tip, it's hard, but if you can, step away from Google. I've mentioned Amazon, but Google is also tricky. Google is an advertising and surveillance company masquerading as a search engine. There have been several key lawsuits where Google has been fined for privacy violations, and currently there is a 5 billion with a B lawsuit pending that alleges that Google still tracks users even when they are using incognito mode in their Chrome browser. As of March 2021, this lawsuit is still pending and will go forward. This is not the first, nor do I think will be the last Google lawsuit. There have been a variety of Google privacy violations in the US and in Europe, resulting in fines, many fines, although 5 billion is a pretty big one. So another easy thing you can do is, if you can avoid it, don't use Chrome. Good alternatives are Firefox, or if you're on a smartphone, use Tor. If you must use Chrome, install the Privacy Badger extension, as it helps block your being tracked. For email, if you can avoid it, avoid Gmail, because again, Google. There are plenty of other free email services. Proton Mail or MailFence are some options. If you must use Google, I have to admit, I do still use a Gmail account. Go into your My Account information and turn off ad personalizations and any other data grabs. So just be aware of that one. For search engines, don't use Google. Instead of Google, use DuckDuckGo. And I use this one, and it provides all the same features as Google, and it is designed for privacy. So feel free, DuckDuckGo, use that one. So another suggestion to increase your privacy online is to step away from Facebook and Instagram. Facebook and Instagram are businesses. And as I mentioned before, if a product is free, you are the product. If you can't step away from Facebook, limit your use or use the Facebook container plugin on Firefox. And the reason is that Facebook is a company that uses your data to make money. Right now, the FTC has imposed a huge penalty for Facebook because of their privacy issues. This was back in 2019. So, like, Facebook and Instagram are big business, and it's kind of creepy what they can do to make money. So this is a great one. A small thing you can do today is check haveibeenpwned.com. So the word pwned has its origins in video game culture from the word owned. And then because the O and the P are close together, pwned became a word that gamers use to say, it's used when someone has been controlled or compromised, like I was pwned in the data breach, that sort of thing. So last year when I was prepping for this class the first time around, I went to haveibeenpwned.com and I was surprised to see what I found. So here I have some screenshots, and I put in my email address, and you click have I been pwned, and yes, I had been. So it searches to see if this email address is associated with any data breaches, and mine had been. So then I went through my passwords in my accounts and deleted old accounts and changed my passwords as I was able to. So there are easy ways, although time-consuming ways, to prevent this and to stop it in the future. Okay, so now, even though I have just given you the whole speech about Google, I am still a Chrome user. And one feature that's kind of nice about Chrome is that it will tell you if your passwords have been involved in a breach. So after looking to see if I had been pwned, I checked my passwords that were saved in my browser, and sure enough, I had even more that had been breached, like kind of a lot. So then I started using a password manager, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. So up here in the upper right-hand corner, you can see all of my extensions. And so this little badger face up here, that is the Privacy Badger extension. And then this little duck is the DuckDuckGo search engine extension. And then this 3 dots ellipses is my new password manager extension. So definitely, you know, there are lots of ways that you can be safer, even if you continue to use Chrome. Okay. So the next screen here, there are anti-tracking apps and plugins. I mentioned Privacy Badger, and you know, I won't go through these one by one. And after the presentation, you'll have the slides so you can look into these each one. But yeah, just do your research and find anti-tracking apps and plugins and use them. So the last easy thing you can do is read up about online security. Read news articles. If there are words in the articles that you don't know what they mean, Google them. I mean, obviously, don't use Google. Use DuckDuckGo. But search them and research what they mean. Here I have Lifehacker listed, and Lifehacker is a good source for technology articles. And so here's a link to the thread that they have on security. But I mean, there are a lot of good sources, either from the threat assessments and other research you do from there. But read up on it. Stuff changes every day, and new things are happening every day. So just be aware of what's going on. Okay. So now for my last 10 slides or so, I'll talk specifically about passwords. Hacking your password. The simple way to get your password is to guess it. But there is another way that is called a brute force attack, where a computer program cracks your password by running through every possible combination of letter, number, and symbol. The longer and more complex the password is, the longer it will take to crack if you encounter a brute force attack. This chart was in a Newsweek article that I saw, and I thought it was really helpful. You can see the short passwords, even if they use symbols and numbers, can be cracked almost instantly. But if the password is very long and very complex, it would take 7 quadrillion years to crack your password. So I don't think hackers would probably take years working on your password, because there are other passwords that are easier to crack. So probably on this graphic, in the orange or yellow area is probably where you want to be. Maybe into the yellow just for some extra security. But orange and yellow will probably be enough for most instances. So make your password a nonsense phrase. Long passwords are good, and long passwords that include random words and phrases are better. If your letter combinations are not in the dictionary, if your phrases are not published in literature, and none of it is grammatically correct, they will be harder to crack, because of course, the easiest way to crack a password is to guess. And in your password, you should randomly mix up the symbols, letters, and numbers. So my example is here, substitute a 0 for the letter O, or an @ for the letter A. If your password is a phrase, consider capitalizing randomly, or a way that's easier to remember too for you. So there's lots of ways here. So this is a big one. Avoid reusing passwords. And this is because if one of your accounts becomes vulnerable, then all of your accounts that use that username and password become vulnerable. So a lot of people use the same password for their email and then use their email to log into Facebook. Well, if one of those becomes hacked, then everything is. Everything could potentially be vulnerable. So avoid reusing your password. Avoid obvious information. So again, this makes your password easier to guess. We've all seen that spy movie where the operative guesses the password because it's the guy's dog's name, 123. When setting up an account, also choose security questions that are hard to guess. So not just your mother's maiden name, because that's, practically public record. Guess something that's really hard to guess. And then this one seems like an obvious one. Don't share your passwords on social media, but there are a lot of creative ways that people have gotten others to share personal information about themselves. Um, so this is a screenshot from my Facebook account of one of my friends sharing this list of favorite things. How many sisters or children they have, what island they've been to, who they called last, what their favorite pie is, their favorite dog, season, holiday. These are all potential passwords. So don't share this stuff online. Don't. It is fun to participate and post this stuff, but avoid it because it's a risk. Also, don't use predictable passwords. For instance, sometimes your job will require that you change your password every 6 weeks or twice a year or whatever the case is. So don't just add a different letter or number to it at the end, because these are easy to guess. If you can get one of them, you can get all of them, and then they're easier. Okay. So in one of the presentations that I watched to prepare for this class, there was a question about if it was safe to save your passwords in your browser. So if we have all of these accounts and each one requires a password and the password needs to be unique and long and complex, it's like really hard to remember all of that. And most browsers will allow you to save your passwords in the browser on that computer. And that allows you to create complex, unique passwords. But is it safe? And the answer is, well, maybe yes, maybe no. It's unclear. So the first scenario is called the evil maid, which is a little bit sexist, but we'll go with it for the sake of the example. So if everything is saved in your browser, if someone has physical access to your device, they could access all of your accounts. So the scenario is called the evil maid because let's say you're in a hotel and you leave your computer in your room. When the maid comes in to clean the room, they would have access to everything. So that's a consideration if your device is lost or unattended, your information could be exposed. And aside from that, the answer is still a question mark because browsers are complicated software and there are a lot of competing concerns. So it's not, are they safe? Maybe, probably, question mark, it's unclear. So what I recommend and what I use is a password manager. A password manager is a program that auto-generates and stores strong passwords for your accounts. The passwords are encrypted and accessible with a master password. So there are free and paid for services that are available. So after I prepped my last presentation for the What the Internet Knows About You, I saw how many of my accounts I had that were vulnerable, and I started using a password manager. I use the free version of LastPass, and like I said, oh, sorry, and I like it a lot. I have my notes and I misread it. Okay. I like it a lot. You download the extension, then it saves everything in the extension. It suggests really long, complex passwords, makes it a really secure password. I have a handful of passwords that I have less complex because I need to use those passwords on multiple devices. But for accounts that I only use on my home computer, the passwords are long and complex. And it is really easy to help keep me safe online. Now, I do have some concerns because it is a free service. And again, I've said it multiple times throughout the presentation. I'm not quite sure what the scheme is, why LastPass is free. I think they hope that enough people upgrade because they're constantly asking me to upgrade. And actually, I am considering upgrading. But but it is a lifesaver. It is a really good system, and it's easy to use and very, very helpful. Highly recommend. Okay, so that takes us to the close of the presentation. In addition to the sources that I cited throughout the presentation, I relied heavily on these presentations. One was a Badger Talk by a professional, a professor, a library professor at the School of Information and Library Sciences at UW. And then another one was a presentation about privacy in libraries. So if you're interested, check out those presentations. I will also be emailing this presentation to those who registered, and I can send it out to anybody who requests it.
Okay.
So this is the end of the presentation. If you have any questions, please get in touch, and thanks for coming. I'm going to stop the recording.